Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Crater. I am a interdisciplinary study student at Western New Mexico University, and today I'll be giving you an overview of my graduate independent project, which is over the tentative topic of binge eating disorder. Tentatively, for those that are not familiar or know the different and various types of eating disorders, specifically binge eating disorder is when one frequently consumes a large amount of food, specifically a large amount of food in one setting, as you go on to read in Chen et al. 2020. In addition to binge eating order, there are five criteria settings specified by the DSM 5. One is recurrent episodes, two is binge eating association, three is the distress, four is what occurs on average, and fifth, the association with the behavior. For recurring episodes, this can be an eating in the discrete period of time, an amount of food that is definitely larger than most people would eat in a similar period of time under similar circumstances. Criterion two, binge eating episodes are associated with three or more, eating much more rapidly than normal, eating until feeling uncomfortably full, eating large amounts of food when not feeling physically hungry. Third is the marked distress, which is regarding to binge eating being present. Fourth criterion is how many times it occurs on average, which could be two of the following. First, at least 2 days a week for a period of 6 months. Second, at least one day a week for a period of up to 3 months. Criterion five simply suggests that associations with this behavior are not comparable to compensatory behavior in other disorders, which include fasting, excessive exercising, or purging as other ways to get rid of the caloric intake. Then, lastly but not least, there is four different types of severity as far as grading. First is mild, which is 1 to 3 episodes a week, moderate, 4 to 7 episodes per week, and severe, 8 to 13 episodes per week. Lastly, anything that is 14 times a week or more as far as episodes is considered extreme. As we continue, we look at certain issues that are characterized of those that have binge eating disorders. Some of these characterizations could be of weight stigma, weight bias, how somebody feels about themselves, maybe the way they look, including the body image. Uh, Estotechnicity is also included in there, but the biggest part of all of the issues is denial. Denial has to be one of the biggest issues because people with this disorder tend to deny or lie about having reoccurrent episodes or periods where they overindulge in eating. Next, we have some theories or methods that have been discovered and shared with us throughout different models of research that has been conducted over binge eating and binge eating disorders. It is known that binge eating disorders are directly associated with different impairments in both physical and mental health. Physical being how big somebody is or how big they should feel they should be. In addition to that, as far as mental health is concerned, this stems from negative issues in the imagery portion of the body, which people become dissatisfied with the way that maybe their body looks, their physical physique, things around them in that nature. In addition to some theories and methods that have been expressed, the connection between binge eating disorders, dietary restraint, and negative effect are included in long term and immediate treat responses for those with the dietary restraint and the negative effect subtypes. In addition to that, some study methods to research binge eating disorders have also been mentioned and interpreted as the interview based eating disorder examination, which takes an in depth look as a series of questions to alleviate and identify where somebody might land as far as their binge eating disorder tendencies, or if they have any type of association with maybe another disorder. In addition to that, they have the emotional eating scale, which pretty much does the same thing. It just sees what specific time periods or situations one might emotionally eat, and it judges it on a scale. Also, that is conclusive to treatment efforts and misdiagnosis of this disorder. And then, of course, we have intervention groups. These groups have been conducted in multiple and various studies. One that I found to be relevant to this course would be the mirror exposure, which brings a closer reality for the individual with uh, binge eating disorders into a more relative state and optimist view of their body and the associations that they might have of weight stigma and body bias, body image bias, that makes them feel negative or unsecured in their own body. In addition to that, some common symptoms some people might not know about, but are very, very important to identify is inside binge eating disorders. The symptoms can range from a plethora of different situations. And on top of that, not all the time are they easily to identify. A lot of people with binge eating disorder do tend to hide and lie about some of the things that they are encountering. Some of the symptoms I was able to derive from research, according to Hubble at L 2020, symptoms include a sense of loss of control when they're in these episodes. They lose control of what they're doing and they proceed to overeat or overconsume. In addition to that, each of these episodes has the characteristics of a large caloric intake. Some of this can be associated with the mental side, which is the emotional eating, eating to suffice emotions. And last but not least, another big symptom is the concern with overweight and obesity, as far as their caloric intake is being increased, and it is reoccurring every time they have one of these episodes. In addition to that, some other symptoms that I found to be very, very interesting, as mentioned already, is the tendency to lie, which then in turn, increases the distorted eating behavior as they tend to lie to those that are around them. They, end up um, cutting themselves off and hiding while they endure these episodes of excessive caloric intake and feeling that sense of loss of control during one of these episodes. In addition to that, it affects social interactions and other demographics that are involved with socializing. This could be social interactions at work, social interactions in their personal life, and so on and so forth, where they tend to not feel comfortable being in those types of situations, and it can ultimately lead to infractions and effects of those social interactions. Last is denial of disorder and the tendency. Anytime somebody might try to approach them to help them or ask or identify what's going on, an immediate denial of the disorder will come up. In some instances, these individuals become very defensive and try to define and explain reasons as to why they do not have any type of correlating symptoms that could be associated with binge eating disorder. Most of the time, it's because they have not yet accepted the fact that there's a problem in order to move on from the problem. In addition, we have some disorders that are underneath the umbrella term. The umbrella term is eating disorders, but as we break it down, there is binge eating disorders. In addition to that, according to Stice at L 2021, binge eating disorders have been shown to have similarities to other types of disorders that are eating related. Now these include anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and purging disorder. Anorexia nervosa is a constant fear, which ultimately leads to low body weight because it's the constant fear of gaining too much weight. This disorder usually has those that have an abnormally low body weight, which is an increased sense of fear of weight gaining if they were to eat or consume any type of calories. Bulimia nervosa, it's secretive periods where they consistently eat large, considerable amounts of food, just like binge eating disorder, but bulimia nervosa is often preceded immediately by self induced vomiting, which is also understood to have the same correlation of thinking that one might be overweight or having excessive concerns over body weight. Purging disorder is a lot like the first two, and binge eating disorder, but after the caloric intake, they immediately purge their system. In other ways, aside from induced vomiting, they will often use methods as far as like laxatives and stuff like that, which then creates excessive bowel movements, anything to rid the body of the caloric intake. This is information that is designated to each one of these types of disorders, but also do not carry 100% similarities in those individuals that have binge eating disorders. Those with binge eating disorders tend to overeat and overeat several periods within 1 week, but they do not necessarily seek purging or the ability to get rid of the caloric intake in any such manner. Next, we have some major findings and suggestions for future studies. A couple future studies have integrated some of their research and their perspectives along with their methods and have really boiled it down to yes, some of this can be used in further research treatment articles or endeavors. Some of those that I think were very good, and showed positive efforts towards future studies would be the use of the denial disordered eating behavior scale, as mentioned throughout the study conducted by Howard at L 2020. And it's also trying to help find out the deliberate denial of disordered eating for treatment efforts. What stages of denial might this individual be in? How excessive is their denial when in regards to an eating disorder or having binge eating disorder. Another one from Press at L 2022, which was very interesting, took the um, idea of binge eating and the body image processing and established that there should be some more research done for miss missing data from other studies that were compiled, which Press at L 2022 was trying to establish an association between the extrastriate body area and the visual attention, including fusiform body area, in the correlation of binge eating to body image processing. Further explanation on that could reveal some more positive signs and directions that studies could go in the future when diagnosing issues with binge eating disorder. Cromer also, 2022, found that future research should assess bias in addition to food bias that is in relation to binge eating, because this is also another issue that formulates people overeating. They might have biases towards food. See if that plays any type of correlation between the effects and the effort to treat binge eating disorders, and if that has any issue with binge eating disorders as a whole. Um, Lastly, another very good topic for major future studies was continuing the implementation of the positive results from the motivational interviewing versus the standard approach of psychoeducation, which was conducted by Velazarb at L 2013, which just brings more studies, just brings more positive information to the reluctant efforts of trying to find more than one diverse option for treatment. This showed a very, very positive uh, result in using psychoeducation versus motivational interviewing, which motivational interviewing seemed to help change the process and the willingness of somebody being considered to have binge eating disorder, as psychoeducation does not offer that type of extent. Next was just talking about how these researchers and these research studies were conducted, some of them including their participants and things like that. As you'll see here on each one of the slides, each three of these studies all possess the same criteria when looking for their participation methods. You'll see that we have inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria. Inclusion criteria is what the individual must meet in order to be included for this type of study. Exclusion criteria is obviously the underlying issues, such as like a mental health disorder, somebody that's pregnant, currently seeking medical attention, might be using some type of medication that could interfere with the clinical trials at this time. Those are all considered under exclusion criteria, and generally, those people do not make the cut as far as the study research is concerned, which then limits some of the sampling areas that researchers have to gather their data from. In addition to this, uh, there was various ways that these announcements were made. Some of them were made across the university, others were made on a radio ad or throughout a printed newspaper or magazine. Um, each one of these also used different methods of clinician trials. Some of them used questionnaires based on different things regarding binge eating disorders and behaviors. Some of these focused on using actual questionnaires that are implemented for binge eating disorders, such as the body shape questionnaire and the eating disorder questionnaire. And in addition to that, while these researchers were studying these participants and the conduction of the studies were going on, each one of them related and relied on the criteria that is provided by the DSM-5. So they were making sure that throughout the course of their studies, the criterion for the DMS-5, specifically over binge eating disorders, was conducted and was adhered to throughout the process to ensure that researchers had the correct criteria and were conducting this in a manner that was beneficial to the research, and obviously in hopes of finding better treatment options for those that suffer from this. As we continue, my last two slides I believe are the most important. The treatment approaches that we've been able to uncover in research has been quite amazing for these individuals that suffer with this on a day-to-day basis. I've highlighted a few of the three that I think would be the best for us to continue researching on and to try and find out if there is more of a positive variance between utilizing this treatment approach against those with binge eating disorders. That would simply be the use of the deliberate denial disordered eating scale, which was in the study of Howard et al. 2020, showed positive sites not only for treatment of binge eating disorder, but the ability to also disassociate a misdiagnosis if that individual might be showing different characteristics of another disorder. The other one I also feel is very big was the mirror exposure, which used mirror exposing for those that have issues with visual parts and visual biases about their body to become a little bit more engaged and help them to produce self guiding controls to not react in certain times as far as those episodes are concerned when they are exposed to that type of treatment. I think that would be something that we could really dive in on and hopefully find some better information and better support for an effective treatment towards binge eating disorders. Again, I've already mentioned this one, the Velozerb 2013, the motivational interviewing, being able to motivate somebody to overcome their predicament and look at life a whole lot different was the point of this article. And I feel like it does have a lot more positive attributes as far as treatment and clinical treatment is concerned than what psychoeducation has done for us. Although psychoeducation cannot be completely ruled out, as it has been a building block for most of the research developed when we do review binge eating disorders. In addition to that, lastly but not least, I saved this one for last because I feel like it's the one of the best examples we have at maintaining some type of true treatment for those with binge eating disorder. I found this very interesting. Brennan at L 2020 studies the positive correlation of yoga as treatment for binge eating disorder. The reason being is that for most that don't know, yoga is a mindfulness based exercise. It promotes mindful readiness, mindful awareness, breathing, and other exercises that help calm and bring the person back to center. In addition to this, this study examined the mindful based intervention, the alterations in experience, emotional regulation, and self criticism. In addition to that, cognitive behavioral therapy can be used in addition to this to help those with this disorder navigate through their episodes and their random times of being uh, less confident or in an area or mindset where they become over self criticism, because those with binge eating disorders are known to be very strict and self criticize quite a bit. I greatly appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you very much for spending this time with me and learning about binge eating disorders. Have a good day.